Here.
Representative Bennett.
Here.
Representative O'Grady.
Here.
Representative Donovan.
Here.
Representative Hull.
Yes.
Representative Kazarian. Representative Lancia. Representative Lombardi.
Present.
Representative Mazakowski.
Here.
Representative McAtee.
Here.
Representative Niederwolo. Representative O'Brien.
Here.
Representative Rango Vassal.
Present.
Representative Regenberg.
Here.
Representative Tobin.
You have a quorum, sir.
Brett Price, why don't you fix on 6011?
Okay, thank you, Chairman, committee members. Organized here for a second. So I don't know. Oh my God! Huh?
Let's go. You got enough stuff? Time is money.
It's a very in-depth subject.
Let's go.
Let's go.
So this is the Geoengineering Act of 2017. So I'd just like to read something, intro on this. So, so the geoengineering, so it's reasonably, I mean, we could ban geoengineering, but recently the federal government and some of the major universities have called to start to engage in geoengineering, and I don't know if anybody has reviewed any of the stuff that I sent out earlier about geoengineering. What I have here, these are all documents from like the DoD, Global Research. These are all government documents from, stemming back to 1978 about proposed geoengineering studies, independent studies, and any of this stuff is available for the committee members. But as of today, as of March 24th, the federal government and some of the major universities they're actually calling to start to engage in geoengineering of the environment in their words, to try to combat climate change or other situations. So it'll be a man's interaction with the environment to adjust the environment. So this bill, H6011, it's essentially a licensing bill that would anybody that wants to engage in any type of environmental engineering would have to apply for the license and be totally transparent to the public and have apply for the license and go through all the proper channels of licensing. I have some witnesses here that are also know more about the law of introducing something like this, and I just had one thing I wanted to read from Rosalind Peterson, who is she's been involved with this for a couple of decades. She's out in California. She's with the Agricultural Defense Coalition, so they've been following this and actually testified in front of the United Nations in one of their committee hearings discussing this actual process, what they would be doing. And she says, it should be noted that the UK Parliament and the US House Science Technology Committee held hearings in 2009 and 2010 on the global geoengineering governance. So that's with our federal government with the UK Parliament. And we're now faced with the reality of ongoing and upcoming geoengineering and the consequences of these actions. It's important for each state to take actions to protect their economy, the resources, and a myriad of plans for the future. You know, this addresses the oceans, the agriculture, the forestry, our economy, human health, and it could negatively impact all of these programs. And I would just encourage everybody to have a look at this and do a little bit of research and certainly support this, because it's here right now. They're proposing to actually start doing these programs, and they're doing one in Arizona with some geoengineering there, which I don't really want to get into the details of it, but so if any programs like that start to come to Rhode Island, I think that there should be governance, and we should certainly have a part in a say as to what's going on in our state for our economy and the environment, because it's very important to me, and I know it's important to you guys. So, thank you. So that's so I have a couple of people that would like to testify. If there's any, Chairman.
So what I request, is there one of the two that you want to let have sort of as much time as they need? I'm going to use sort of that, because we have so many folks coming up on the next bill. I'm going to, obviously give the representative all the time they need, but I'm also going to have a proponent. There's no opponent, nobody's opposed, at least I don't think so. The hearing's so hard on spots here, but I was anticipating asking the second person, though, to limit their testimony between 2 and 3 minutes. So
Okay.
I was going to say, is there one person you'd rather have?
So
the names are a little. I've got Julio Gomez and
Jolie Diane. Sorry.
what's that?
Jolie DePaul.
Did you sign up?
I don't know.
That's all right. No, if you didn't, I'll write your name on there. But so
Julio,
would you like to?
go first?
Sure, I'll go.
All right.
Okay.
So.
Good afternoon. I am Julio Gomez, an attorney practicing for 20 years in civil rights, commercial litigation, and environmental law. I live and work in New Jersey. And I'm here today as legal counsel to Dane Wigington of Geoengineeringwatch.org, a California activist, and the Minnesota Natural Health Coalition, an educational nonprofit organization based in Minneapolis. The Geoengineeringwatch.org is a data and research repository on the critical issue of global climate engineering and climate intervention programs. That website has had over 26 million people visit, and roughly 20,000 people visit that website daily. Minnesota Natural Health Coalition is a nonprofit focusing on natural health and health freedom choices. They've taken an interest in geoengineering because of their belief that geoengineering poses substantial harm to health. Thank you for the opportunity to offer comments here in support of House Bill 6011, the Geoengineering Act of 2017. And I begin my comments by stating categorically that man's ability to deliberately manipulate and control the climate and change our environment is no longer science fiction. More than 25 years ago, in 1991, the U.S. Patent Trademark Office assigned to Hughes Aircraft Company a method of reducing atmospheric or global warming by seeding the atmosphere with a layer of metallic particles, such as aluminum oxide. That patent is currently owned and been assigned by Raytheon, a defense contractor. In 2009, a report by the United Kingdom's Royal Society, which Representative Price referred to, said this about geoengineering, quote, "Appropriate governance mechanisms for regulating deployment of geoengineering methods should be established before they are needed in practice. And these mechanisms should be developed in the near future if geoengineering is to be considered as a potential option for mitigating climate change." The Royal Society further posited that there is clear need for governance of research involving large-scale field testing of some geoengineering techniques, especially solar radiation management and ecosystem intervention methods, which could have significant undesirable effects which might not easily be confined to a specific area. So I'm not going to go through the entire chronology of the number of congressional hearings and United Nations hearings and reports on this subject. But to put it succinctly, Just last month, as Mr. Price spoke, researchers at Harvard University announced a project to send aerosol injections into the Earth's atmosphere in what is probably going to be the world's largest geoengineering experiment to date. Now, given this brief history, there can be no dispute that the technology to deliberately manipulate the Earth's climate is real. It has been studied and written about for decades. And academics and political leaders right now are seriously considering experimentation with the possibility of deploying geoengineering. These are technologies to intentionally manipulate the atmosphere and our environment as a plan of last resort, a plan B, if you will, to counteract the effects of climate change because our society has not been able to control emissions. And fossil fuels is still the energy of the day. Now, the only question before this committee today is whether Rhode Island will preserve its right to authorize, oversee, and control deployment of such radical technologies, especially in light of the monumental risks posed by geoengineering. Now is the time to establish policy in this vital area, beginning with public oversight of geoengineering. Now, House Bill 6011 is an important step to ensure that no one engages in climate engineering within the state of Rhode Island without the express approval of state officials, and only after careful review by state agencies with the expertise to assess risks and the efficacy of these proposals, with input from the public. Now, we support 6011 for the following reasons. First and foremost, Bill 6011 is necessary to protect human health and safeguard the environment. The 1991 patent, now owned by Raytheon, proposed seeding the atmosphere with metallic particles such as aluminum oxide. Now, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, exposure to high levels of aluminum can result in respiratory and neurological problems, possibly including Alzheimer's disease. Geoengineering methods also propose seeding the atmosphere with sulfate aerosols, sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, exposure to sulfur dioxide affects the lungs, and at high levels may result in burning of the nose, throat, breathing difficulties, and severe airway obstructions. Exposure to hydrogen sulfide is the worst. Again, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, a few breaths of air containing high levels of hydrogen sulfide can cause death. Lower, longer-term exposure can cause eye irritation, headache, and fatigue. Now, in light of the fact that geoengineering is being considered seriously, up for experimentation, Rhode Island has a moral obligation to protect the public from these dangers. Geoengineering poses serious risks for the environment as well. Geoengineering techniques may alter precipitation patterns, produce droughts, increase acid rainfall. Aerosol particles sprayed into the atmosphere could accelerate ozone depletion or reduce the total sunlight that reaches the Earth's surface, impact agricultural production, or reduce solar power production. Sulfate injection into the atmosphere could increase acid deposition in the ocean, possibly beyond biological thresholds. Geoengineering may pose unknown stresses on ecosystems and biodiversity. Now, some of these proposed techniques are not easily reversible if the effects are not what were intended. As Newton said, what goes up must come down. Any particulates in the air will eventually fall to the ground on our homes, our businesses, the land, the water, our persons. Farmland covers about 10% of this state. Aquaculture is an important part of the state economy. We are not aware of anyone that has considered, much less studied, the impact of geoengineering on the ocean state's oyster harvest, for example. The economic impact of geoengineering experiments gone awry is completely unknown. The consequences of deliberately manipulating the climate and the environment are not completely understood. More research and experimentation is underway, and absent legislation or some form of public oversight to monitor and control experimentation, private actors may be free to engage in reckless behavior in the name of science or financial gain. And I'll give you an example. In 2012, an American citizen conducted a geoengineering experiment in ocean fertilization off the west coast of Canada by dumping 100 tons of iron sulfate into the Pacific Ocean in an effort to trigger a plankton boom and promote salmon restoration. Now, state laws should prohibit this type of activity without authorization, but current laws do not necessarily prevent these activities. It's not clear that geoengineering is prohibited, even regulated by existing federal and state environmental laws. House Bill 611 will guard against careless experimentation and deployment of any such activity and its concomitant risks. House Bill 6011 proposes a sensible method for tracking and assessing the danger and efficacy of any geoengineering activity in the state and for monitoring that activity and its impacts. In that regard, House Bill 6011 is entirely consistent with this state's environmental policies. And this state has vowed to protect air, water, land, and natural resources located within the state from pollution, impairment, and destruction. House Bill 6011 upholds this state's commitment to those policies. Additionally, Bill 6011 is a modest bill. It only requires that anyone proposing to deploy geoengineering technology in the state apply for a license. By disclosing the proposed project, its scope and methods, chemical substances being employed, and the qualifications of the participants. That's not asking a lot in terms of regulation. It promotes transparency by providing the public with online access to that information and an opportunity to participate in the decision-making process through the hearing. It promotes efficacy by engaging the state's leading experts in environment, health and agriculture, natural resources, and emergency management to weigh in on the potential impacts of the proposed activity. House Bill 6011 is not a blanket prohibition on geoengineering, though some might argue it should be. But it is a sensible approach to a new technology. The deliberate manipulation of the Earth's atmosphere and climate is real. It is imminent. It raises a host of scientific, political, ethical, and moral concerns, and in light of these concerns, Rhode Island is poised to meet that challenge today and lead on this issue for the sake of its citizens and its environment. I thank you very much for the opportunity to present these comments.